This video is going to be general knowledge on how to go about doing speedruns. I won't be going over specific matchups for weapons and monsters, but this video will apply to every speedrun. At the end of this video, I'll be going over my personal favorite speedrun and how I went about doing it. The first step is to choose the monster and quest. Every monster has their own main solo quest. There are some multi-hunt quests like the Double Furious for Zhang and the Double Crab. Choosing the quest also means choosing the spawn. When I say choosing the spawn, I mean resetting the quest if the monster doesn't spawn where you want it. Since it's a 60% chance for spawn A, it's a lot more convenient just to do that one. But most of the time, spawn A will be the worst spawn. Now that you know what monster you're fighting, you have to learn what it's weak to and the thresholds that it has. Some monsters can fall when you break a certain part. For example, Sregios, if you break his leg, he falls for 14 seconds. Knockdowns like that are mostly useful in TA runs and not freestyle. Step 2 is making the build. I won't be going over all the best builds for all the best matchups, cause there are way too many. If you're unsure about a build, you can watch other speedrunners or ask in Discord servers. When choosing the weapon for your build, keep in mind that monsters have different elemental and raw hit zones. The lower the elemental hit zone on the monster, the less you should care about the element on your weapon. Using Astalos as an example, you can see when his head is charged, he has 63 raw hit zone, but only 15 water and ice hit zones. So for this matchup, you should prioritize raw damage over elemental. Now this is not saying that you should use a weapon with no element on it, it's just that you should use whatever ice weapon has the highest raw. As of right now, all the weapons use elemental meta, except for Greatsword and some very specific matchups for different weapons. When making the build, you can use online set builder. With this, you can put your augmented armor and your charms to see all the possible outcomes that you can get. To see what build is the best, you can use an EFR calculator. EFR stands for effective raw. This is essentially how much damage you're gonna do. With this, you can import the uptimes of any active skills. For example, offensive guard lasts 15 seconds. If you know the script of your run, you can import roughly how long it'll be active throughout the entire hunt. This isn't a perfect calculator because it doesn't take into account moves that can't crit, like with Hunting Horn, Switch Axe, and Charge Blade. Builds aren't just the armor you wear. This can include palico buffs, all the dongo you eat, and even endemic life. A Cutterfly gives you 50% affinity for 1 minute. The duration can be increased with Dongo Enhanced Fighter. If you use this in a run, you don't need Critical Eye at all, unless your weapon has negative affinity. This is the best Palamute loadout. You don't always want to go Paralysis. Sometimes pure damage is better. And when you do use Paralysis, it's not always best to have status attack up. Most of the time you'll want Paralysis to proc at a certain time, not just at all. So if you have status attack up, sometimes it'll proc too early. You can mix and match these depending on when you want the paralysis. And sometimes you don't need both dogs on the paralysis. It just entirely depends on the script and what monster you're fighting. Most of the time it's better to go 2 dogs, but sometimes going 1 Palico, 1 Palamute is better. Rousing Roar gives you 30% affinity for 2.5 minutes. It activates about a minute into the hunt, so it can be another way to get affinity. Choosing the dongo order with the hopping skewers is really important. For most weapons, it'll be booster level 4, another one level 3, and then a bad one at level 1. There's a spreadsheet in the description that shows all the effects of every dongo and at what levels. Step 3 is the script, so the hunt. I can't give you a surefire way to make a script because it heavily depends on the monster and the weapon, so I'll be giving steps that apply to every weapon. The first step is to figure out the path you take to the monster. This can be getting endemic life on the way and applying buffs to yourself. This also includes swapping scrolls if you're on Dereliction or Mail of Hellfire, fast traveling if you have to, riding on your Palamute, or zipping through the air with your wirebugs. Step 2 is the opening. A lot of weapons get buffs during the fight, such as Insect Glaive, Switch Axe, Charge Blade, etc. Also, most weapons have counters, so the initial roar you're most likely going to be countering. Most weapons will get the mount early. The Palamutes can also help with this. So the third step is the fake mount. A fake mount is when you hit the monster out of the mounting state instead of riding it. It's almost never better to ride it due to the lack of damage. Putting the pitfall trap under the monster while it's mounted will make the monster go into the trap after it gets out of the state. If you can't put a trap down because it's an Elder Dragon or you're doing TA rules, you can still do a really strong attack. For low tier monsters, the monster will stay in the pitfall until the end of the hunt if you can stun lock it. Like here, the paralysis activated roughly 8 seconds into the pitfall, then I KO'd it a few seconds after the paralysis. This led to a 25-second pitfall trap. This is easier to do with some weapons, but for the most part, the dogs will help you if you time it right. After the mount, it's really just up to you to know the monster and how you fight it with the weapon. There are over 800 different weapon to monster matchups, so I can't go into detail on how to fight the monsters. For the most part, a speedrun will be trial and error. Learn what happens to the monster at what times, any knockdown thresholds, and just overall know what happens during the hunt ahead of time. Now I'll be going over my thought process for this Rathian run. The first thing you'll notice is my demon powder is on my item bar immediately. You can organize your item loadouts to have your items in a specific order. To start off, I hold down circle to get on my palamute. Then I immediately switch scrolls. I then use might seed and demon powder. Mega demon drug is almost never worth it unless the hunt is at least 5 minutes long. Since I know the hunt is only a minute long, I get the Cutterfly for the 50% affinity. To get Rathian's attention as soon as possible, I use a sonic bomb. This wastes no time in aggroing her. The reason I do a perfect rush instead of Metsu is because Rathian takes 20% more damage when enraged. If I had used Metsu, she would have been KO'd, and the enraged state would come like 12 seconds later. Normally at this point, the dogs will trigger the mount, but to make sure the mount didn't come early, I took silk binders off the palamutes. This way I get to choose when the mount activates. Now I set up the fake mount with the trank bombs and pitfall trap. Then I hit the head a little bit to build up more KO. I know where Rathian's head will be when she goes in the pitfall trap, so I bomb counter immediately. I do plunging thrusts instead of falling bash so she doesn't get KO too early. And at this point I know the second hit of perfect rush will KO her. Then I do another bomb counter to finish her. If the mount had come any later, I wouldn't have done enough damage for her to be captured in the pitfall trap. I'll leave a lot of links in the description, so feel free to check those out. Don't forget to like and subscribe.